أعزائي طلبة المرحلة الثانية، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Our lecture today is about the anatomy of the esophagus and stomach. First, we will take the esophagus, or another name is gullet. In Arabic, it means al-mari'. It is a muscular tube about 25 centimeter in length. It have two parts. The major part or the longer part is the thoracic part, and the smaller part or shorter part, that's the abdominal part. Connect the pharynx to the stomach. As it connects the pharynx to the stomach, its function is act as a conduit for the food, for the bolus of food or fluid from the pharynx to the stomach. It performs its function through what we call a wave-like contraction of its muscular wall, that is called peristalsis. Peristalsis, this is a wave-like contraction of the muscular wall of the esophagus in order to propel the bolus of food or fluid to the stomach. The esophagus, it will pass through the diaphragm through the esophageal opening at the level of T10, that is 10th thoracic vertebra. Then we will have the abdominal part. Is a very short part, about ½ inch, that extend in the abdominal cavity to join the stomach at the gastroesophageal junction. On the right side of the stomach. This junction, your gastroesophageal junction, it have no anatomical sphincter. No anatomic sphincter exists at this region. Instead, there is a circular layer of smooth muscle that acts as a physiological sphincter. So there is no anatomical sphincter. Instead, we have some sort of physiological sphincter. Why we need sphincter at this site? The tonic contraction of this sphincter will prevent the stomach content from regurgitation or from passing up or regurgitation into the esophagus. It will be prevented by the tonic contraction of this sphincter. How this sphincter is controlled? The closure of the sphincter is under vagal control. It is innervated by the vagus nerves. We have two vagal nerves here that control the closure of the sphincter, and this can be augmented or reduced in response to hormones. Also, the hormone, special GI tract hormone, will affect the function of this sphincter. What are the esophageal relations? We have anterior relation. Anteriorly, the esophagus, abdominal portion of the esophagus, is related to the posterior surface of the left lobe of the liver. This is the left lobe of the liver. Is related to the abdominal portion of the esophagus anteriorly. Posteriorly, it is related to the left crus of the diaphragm, and we have the left and right vagi lie on the anterior and posterior surfaces of the esophagus. We can see here, this is the diaphragm, this is the abdominal portion of the esophagus, and it is related to the left crus of the diaphragm. This is the left crus of the diaphragm that lies posterior to the esophagus. Also, we have, this is the anterior vagal trunk and the posterior vagal trunk that lies anterior and posterior to the abdominal portion of the esophagus. What is the blood supply of esophagus? Is from esophageal branches of the left gastric artery. This is the left gastric artery, which is a branch from the celiac trunk and give small branches that is called esophageal branches. Esophageal branches supply the lower part of the esophagus or the abdominal portion of esophagus. The venous drainage of the lower esophagus is important clinically. Why? Because of the some of its venous blood will pass to the portal circulation, to the portal vein, and then pass to the liver, and some of this blood also will pass to the systemic circulation to the esophagus vein. So this part of esophagus is a site of portosystemic anastomosis. Portosystemic anastomosis. If we have a problem in the liver, this means if we have a problem in the liver and there is an abnormal increase in the portal blood tension, that is called portal hypertension, the blood will will pass back through these lower esophageal veins to the systemic vein. It will cause what we call esophageal varices. Esophageal varices معناها دوالي المريء. دوالي المريء. The stomach. The stomach, from this picture we can see, it is the dilated part of the digestive system or the gut tube. Why it is dilated? Because one of its function is the storage of food and mixing of food. In general, the gut tube or the digestive tube is a muscular tube and it changes its diameter according to the function. So in stomach it is dilated part of the gut tube. Location of the stomach, it is located in the upper part of the abdomen, mostly under the cover of the left costal margin. So it's situated in the left hypochondrium and the epigastric region, and it reaches to the umbilical region. And it is mostly discovered by the left costal margin. It have two surfaces, anterior and posterior surface. It have two borders in right and left border that is called curvatures. We have lesser curvature and we have the greater curvature. And it have a right border that is called lesser curvature and it have a left border that is called greater curvature. What are the parts of the stomach? At the level of the cardia, the part of the stomach that lies above the level of the cardia, that is dome shape يعني شكله مثل القبة and it's usually filled with gas, is called the fundus. The part of the stomach that extends from the level of the cardia, that is below the fundus, to the level of the incisula angularis or angular notch. Incisula angularis, that is a constant notch in the lesser curvature. This part is called the body of the stomach. So we have the fundus, body. Next, from the incisula angularis to the pylorus, we have what we call the pyloric antrum. And lastly, we have the pylorus, which is the most tubular part. Of the stomach that contain the pyloric sphincter. So these are the main parts of the stomach, which are the fundus, body, pyloric antrum, and the pylorus. What are the orifices or the openings of the stomach? We have a proximal and distal opening, or upper and lower opening. The upper one, it is called cardiac orifice, and the lower one, it is called the pyloric orifice. Here, the pyloric orifice is guarded by this anatomical sphincter, which is called the pyloric sphincter. Here we have a thickening in the circular muscle layer that it will form this sphincter that controls the rate of the passage of food from the stomach to the small intestine. The visceral peritoneum will cover the anterior surface and the posterior surface, and on the lesser curvature, the two layers will duplicate and it will form the lesser omentum. Lesser omentum extends in between the lesser curvature of the stomach to the fissure of ligamentum venosum and porta hepatis, and the two layer also it will extend from the greater curvature to pass to the spleen as the gastrosplenic ligament and to pass down as the greater omentum. Greater omentum. This is the lesser omentum extending from lesser curvature to the liver, and this is the greater omentum passing from the stomach down and it ascends up to be attached to the transverse colon. What are the relations of the stomach? Anteriorly, we can see here that it is related to the left lobe of the liver, mainly to the left costal margin, and we have also it is related to the anterior abdominal wall directly, and here the anterior abdominal wall is dissected out. So the anterior relation of the stomach will be the anterior abdominal wall, left costal margin, left pleura and lung, the diaphragm, and the left lobe of the liver. What is the posterior relation of the stomach here? The stomach is dissected out and reflected up, and we can see the space that lies behind the stomach, which is the space of the lesser sac. And the stomach here, it is resting on its what we call the stomach bed. Stomach bed is formed of the spleen, upper part of the left kidney with the suprarenal gland, the pancreas, transverse mesocolon, and the transverse colon. So the posterior relation of the stomach is first of all the lesser sac, space, the diaphragm, spleen, left suprarenal gland, upper part of the left kidney, splenic artery that runs on the upper border of the pancreas, transverse mesocolon, and the transverse colon. All these are the structural posterior relation to the stomach, and it is called stomach bed. What is the muscle layer of the stomach? Muscle layer of the stomach is called muscularis. Here in the stomach, usually in the gut tube, in general, we have two layers, circular and longitudinal. But in the stomach, we have an additional layer that is oblique layer. So we have a longitudinal layer, circular layer, and we have additional oblique layer. This arrangement of muscle fiber is special for the stomach to do its function, which is the mixing of food. We can see here this is the longitudinal layer, and we have also circular layer, and we have another additional layer which is the oblique layer. In the pylorus, we have a thickening of the circular smooth muscle layer in order to perform this sphincter that is called pyloric sphincter that controls the rate of the passage of food from the stomach to the small intestine. The inside of the stomach, or the mucous membrane or the mucosa of the stomach, is highly vascularized, that have rich blood supply, and is thrown into fold, and it is folded longitudinally, mainly longitudinally, and this fold is called rugae. This fold or rugae will become flattened when the stomach is distended with food. The blood supply of the stomach, we can appreciate that the stomach, from this figure, it have a rich blood supply. Its blood supply is mainly derived from the celiac trunk. This is the artery of the foregut. So the arteries of the stomach are derived from the branches of the celiac artery, and the venous drainage is to the portal vein. That it will pass to the liver. So the arteries of the stomach that is derived from the celiac trunk is the left gastric artery. This is the left gastric artery that pass up and then in between the two layers of the lesser omentum to supply the upper right part of the stomach. It gives what we call esophageal branches that supply the lower 1/3 of the esophagus. It descends down in between the two layers of the lesser omentum to anastomose with the right gastric artery. Right gastric artery is a branch from the hepatic artery. This is the right gastric artery, is a branch of hepatic artery, which is a branch of the celiac trunk. Also, it passes in between the two layers of lesser omentum to anastomose with the left gastric artery and supply the lower right part of the stomach. The short gastric arteries, these are the short gastric arteries that originate from the splenic artery at the hilum of the spleen, and these are branches will supply the fundus of the stomach. Left gastroepiploic artery. This is a branch of the splenic artery at the hilum of the spleen. It passes in between the two layers of the greater omentum on the greater curvature to anastomose with the right gastroepiploic artery. The right gastroepiploic artery is a branch of artery that is called gastroduodenal artery. Gastroduodenal artery. It passes in between the two layers of the greater omentum to anastomose with the left gastroepiploic artery. So in general, we can appreciate that the stomach have rich blood supply, and it's originated from the celiac trunk. The venous drainage of the stomach. All blood from the stomach will pass eventually to the portal vein. So we have the right and left gastric vein that drain directly to the portal vein. The short gastric veins and the left gastroepiploic vein will join the splenic vein that it will pass behind the stomach. The right gastroepiploic vein will join the superior mesenteric vein directly. Here the stomach is dissected out and we can see this is the portal vein. Portal vein is formed by the fusion of the splenic vein and the superior mesenteric vein. We can see here that this is the right gastric vein and this is the left gastric vein. They drain directly into the portal vein. The short gastric veins that drain the fundus, and the left gastroepiploic will drain to the splenic vein that pass behind the pancreas, while the right gastroepiploic will pass to the superior mesenteric vein. What is the lymphatic drainage? Lymphatic drainage of the stomach is related to its blood supply. The lymph vessels will follow the arteries, so it's related to the arteries. So we have right and left gastric node, right and left gastric nodes. We have right and left gastroepiploic nodes. They take the same name of arteries. And we have short gastric nodes, and we have the main celiac nodes. Main celiac nodes will receive all the lymph from the stomach eventually, and we can see here the lymph from the right and left gastric will pass eventually to the celiac nodes from the right and left gastroepiploic, from the splenic and short gastric. All of them will send its lymph through to the celiac nodes. Celiac nodes are situated around the celiac trunk. What is the nerve supply of the stomach? We have two types of nerve supply because it is a viscera. We have autonomic nerve, that's sympathetic supply, and parasympathetic. The sympathetic is from the celiac plexus that's originating around the celiac trunk. It will give sympathetic nerve. And we have parasympathetic supplies through the anterior and posterior vagal nerve. The vagal nerve are secretomotor nerve. Secretor, it means it will cause the gland to become activated and secrete various types of enzyme and digestive juices, and motor to the wall of the stomach, so it is called secretomotor, while the sympathetic, it is act against that of the parasympathetic. These are the anterior, this is the anterior and posterior vagal trunk. The anterior vagal trunk, which is originally is the left vagus nerve in the thorax, in the abdomen it become anterior and supply mainly the anterior surface of the stomach and give a large branch that's passed to the liver, that's called hepatic branch, and from this hepatic branch it will give nerve supply to the pylorus. The posterior vagal trunk, which is in the thorax, is the right vagal nerve. In the abdomen will become the posterior vagal trunk or posterior vagal nerve. It will mainly supply the posterior surface of the stomach, but it sends the branches to the celiac plexus and to the superior mesenteric plexus. Thank you.